Hi everyone, I've got a very special guest today. I'm down on the Gold Coast and I'm down at Harcourts Coastal. Now, Dane, who used to be a coach, so he was on that side, and then 7 years ago he decided, you know what, I'm going to get, when I say back on the tools, I'm going to get into owning a business. And he put it all on the line. Now, I think that's sensational. He's 7 years down, he's got 80 salespeople. What did you do that for?
Oh no, it's funny, isn't it? Well, it's interesting as coming from a coach,
Yes.
and then auctioneer into real estate ownership. Sometimes when you do speaking, you travel around the country, you do a session.
I've heard this one that you've done.
And you leave them in this kind of state of, oh, how good was that?
Yeah.
Because it's hard to be a prophet in your own land, but when you're the external person coming in, you're always the wizard.
Yeah.
And then when you fly back to home,
Yeah.
you have this delusion that everyone's changed. You know, I'm changing the world. The biggest difference when you own a real estate business is you realise that change is hard. And when the trainer leaves,
Yeah.
that's when the old habits start again.
Yeah.
So it's actually really interesting to be driving, and that's really the main reason why I wanted to build a business, is because I just didn't want to have...
Didn't want fly in, fly out.
I didn't
You
want
want to
fleeting
actually-
connection. I wanted to actually have a real connection.
Well, 7 years down the track and you've evolved as far as, and you've got a number of offices and they bring their own challenges.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember a talk you did at one of the seminars, and you said early days that you've gone out and you've actually gone to present, and then you've gone back and sat in the car and listened to some of your own tapes going, I've got to eat my own dog food here. You know, like it's, and it really was.
I listed an auction early on, and on the way to the auction or presentation,
Yeah.
I was listening to my own CD on how to list an auction. But what was,
That's
interesting,
awesome.
I got the auction, but what was interesting is I actually completely stuffed up my first auction, and I was an auction coach.
Oh.
So here's me as an auction coach, and I actually had a CD, believe it or not, of how to sell an auction under the hammer, and I completely did everything the wrong thing you should do. And that was a real valuable experience, because I realised how powerful that force is to buy into the vendor's story. And that's the big mistake I make. I mean, that story goes on because I did have a second chance to re-auction it, and I'll tell you what, I didn't make that same mistake again. Yeah.
Now that point there, as far as you've just, as you can see from behind us, this was his 40th this year, and as you've matured in the business, it sounds like you've allowed yourself to become more vulnerable, to be more open as far as feedback wise, because you've spoken off camera how sometimes you've, you know, had 4 offices, now 3, had a couple of key people, some of those left, but you've evolved, and each time you've actually looked in the mirror and gone, what could I do differently in order to adjust that?
Absolutely, and I take total responsibility for that. So,
Which is not always the case. I mean, not for you, but I mean in general, for all of us, it's not always the case.
I have a view that it's always my fault.